All right, Nick, let's talk about the Oregon Ducks offseason. One of the more exciting times to be an Oregon fan because this team can flat out recruit. They can get the best players in the country, and it doesn't matter where they are. And this latest pickup by Dan Lanning is one of the best ones so far in this 2026 class. I think Ducks fans are going to love this one. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, I'm Andrew. That's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, the Oregon Ducks, really great recruiting news for them. Absolutely dominated here. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on The Score. It says, five-star edge rusher Richard Wesley committed to Oregon on Saturday. He told On3's Hayes Fawcett, great reporter, says the 6'5", 250-pound defender chose the Ducks over Texas, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. Great, they were able to beat those guys out, big time players in the college football world. It says Wesley has played his last two seasons at Sierra Canyon High School in Chatsworth, California. He produced 27 and a half tackles for loss, 18 and a half sacks across 24 contests during that stretch, according to MaxPreps.com. This guy seems fantastic, Nick. I really like what he brings to the table. I think he's going to be a big time player for the Ducks. But importantly, the Ducks back in their home state of California, just running things. They're doing a great job, able to get a big time five-star prospect here. I think this was a really great move for them. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Ducks fans, in the comment section below, let us know. We're talking already 2026 class for Oregon. This one has brought it up. They're about top 15, number 14 overall in the country in 2026. Is there a guy in this class? I think Wesley probably one of the more higher graded guys in this, but is there a guy that speaks to you that you really like in the 2026 class so far? Or is there somebody that you think that they're going to target that you like as well? Let us know your thoughts on everything Oregon's Ducks in this 2026 recruiting class in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest pickup out of Oregon?
So I think it's important to understand, and I love how you kind of alluded to it there, back in their home state of California, right? Because the Oregon Ducks, for really the past half decade, have dominated the state of California in terms of recruiting. But really, the past 3 months or so, the USC Trojans, obviously a traditional power in the country, and of course the state of California, certainly the Los Angeles area, have come out and done a great job. Lincoln Riley and his staff, give credit where credit is due. They've kind of beaten back Dan Lanning and his staff in that area a little bit. But now the Empire kind of strikes back a little bit here. We got a good old fashioned recruiting battle in one of the hotbed areas in the country when it comes to the Los Angeles area and frankly California as a state. It's the area for top recruits. Certainly on the West Coast, I would argue it's the best in the country. People in Texas or in Florida may differ, but worst case scenario, it's like top two or top three. But the Oregon Ducks have dominated California for a while, and now USC, Lincoln Riley, they made a lot of big hires, and they're coming back and they're throwing a lot at Oregon, and they've done a great job with some of these recruits over the past few weeks and months. But now Dan Lanning and his staff, they said, okay, you can hit us, we can hit back too. We're going to go back and get a big kid right out of your backyard. In fact, let's pull up a map here. I think this really shows how impressive this was for Oregon. So the first map here is just straight off of Google Maps, as anyone can probably very clearly tell. It's just the driving distance, the path you take if you're going from Chatsworth to Eugene, right? Again, about 12 and a half hours with no traffic. LOL, there's traffic in California. Long distance there, right? This is not like a local kid, obviously, going from California to Oregon. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's pull up our second graphic here. This is the driving time from Chatsworth to USC, about 45 minutes, right? You can see the loop it takes there. Obviously, it's Los Angeles, so traffic and all that kind of crap. But this is a kid right out of Lincoln Riley's backyard. This was a message sent from Dan Lanning in Oregon to USC. We still run California. You guys have had a few nice weeks and a few nice months. USC, you guys are good, big name, all that stuff, good coaching staff, made a lot of great hires, done some great job in recruiting. Dan Lanning says, you guys are doing well. We'll beat you in your own backyard with a massive prospect. This is a massive statement. This is a declarative message to USC. Good job, guys. You're still number two to us. Now USC has to respond. I think it's going to be very interesting what happens next over the next few days, weeks, months in terms of recruiting. Because if USC can't answer this with another slate of big name guys in California, I don't see how the Ducks don't continue to dominate this state. Because from a perspective of watching this offseason, Oregon was clearly crushing California. USC and Lincoln Riley, they kind of usurped them for a lot of guys. And I was thinking, it's going to get interesting here. This USC is pulled even with Oregon now. And if that can continue, that trend can continue, could USC take over the dominant team on the West Coast? And the moment that switch may be flipping, the moment where it looks like the Trojans may take over the Duck spot, what does Oregon and Dan Lanning do? They take a massive recruit, 5-star guy, right out of Los Angeles. Phenomenal job by Oregon. This was a directed attack. This is a massive state. Now, look, they're going after 5 stars anyway, but the timing of it, getting the job done, that was a statement saying, this is where we dominate. We still own the state of California. We still are the force here when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to being the college football leader. USC, you had a good run over the past few months. Good for you. We still are the dominant force. It'll be very interesting to see what the Trojans do next, because right now, if you're USC, I think you're a little shell-shocked, right? I know they weren't a favorite to get this kid, but to have Oregon come in, their number one battler on the West Coast, and get him away from them, pull a Los Angeles kid up to Eugene, that is a direct attack. Great job by Dan Lanning and his staff. We'll have to see how USC responds, but we've got one heck of a recruiting rivalry and a football rivalry as well brewing on the West Coast.
Yeah, Nick, and I think, like you said, this is a great one. And like you said earlier, and I think this is important to say, give credit where credit is due. In this 2026 class, USC has done a great job. It's the number one overall class so far in 2026. Can they hang on to it? I don't know. Does Oregon climb the ranks as they start to really dig in here? Oregon really hasn't focused on this class so much so far. They only have 8 commits versus 26 commits so far for USC. We all know how things change over the course of a year. I think Oregon climbs a little bit higher, and USC is just going to have to cling on to what they have. They're already at the top. There's really nowhere else to go but potentially down. So I think that's really important. And we saw the early start, the early get to this recruiting class for USC. They hit California hard. They got 15 players out of the state of California, and they really did some good work there. So credit to them. But Dan Lanning, Oregon, once they finally focus on the 2026 class, they're starting to come back. They hit California hard. Already 3 guys out of the state of California. And here's the kicker for me. A composite 5-star player as far as 24/7 ranking go for Richard Wesley. Better than any player that USC has gotten out of the state of California. Their best rated player, RJ Sermons, cornerback out of Rancho Cucamonga. This guy's a composite 4-star. So already, once Oregon puts a little bit of thought power into trying to dominate the state of California, they go ahead and get a better player than USC has gotten so far in this recruiting cycle for the 2026 class. So great job by Oregon. They're really starting to focus. I think this was just, we weren't really trying yet. We were focusing on something else. We haven't put all of our effort. Obviously, you can see by the numbers, 26 players to 8. We haven't really started to hit the 2026 class quite as hard yet. So USC, great job. Oregon coming back. I think this is the shot over the bow. We've seen them come into California, get a 5-star player, a better player than USC has even gotten out of the state of California so far. But I love this. I like and what we call this, 2 great recruiting teams going back and forth on the West Coast. I mean, who doesn't like to see stuff like this? I love it when we see this. Are they going to flip this guy? Is this guy going to stay here? Who's going to be able to come get this player from this area? I love these type of recruiting battles. It's almost as exciting as the regular season. Not quite, but it's still really fun to pay attention to and watch in the offseason. And this latest news from Oregon shows they're ready to deal. They're ready to come back with the fury to the state of California and start to get these really top-end players here. They've done it here with Richard Wesley, and I'm excited to see what they do going forward.
Yeah, and just a couple final points to end on. And I just want to highlight this when it comes to Wesley, right? Obviously, coming from or living in Los Angeles, right? It wasn't that like he never did anything with USC. He took an unofficial visit to the Trojans in March, right? And I just confirmed that via 24/7 Sports just to make sure I was factually accurate. So again, this is not a kid that for whatever reason hates the Trojans and decided to just completely ignore them. He's a Los Angeles guy. He unofficially visited the campus and the program right in the middle of spring ball and all that kind of stuff going on. So it's not like he just hated USC and was completely ignoring them. He gave them a fair shot, right? He went on the campus, he checked it out. He's from the area. He knows a lot of the players that probably attend or have a lot of connections there, like anyone does who's a 5-star recruit in that part of the world. And despite that, Dan Lanning and Oregon were able to get it done. I think that's very, very important to understand. This is not a kid who hates USC. He's not like a, for whatever reason, hates the Trojans and therefore just completely just ignored them and decided to go to a massive, West Coast rival. He chose Oregon because he believes it's a better program despite USC doing good things. I think that's an important factor to really hammer home here. And that's where Oregon has a key advantage that I think they continue to leverage. They're a better program on Saturdays right now than USC is. USC's done a great job in recruiting. You brought up those numbers. But Oregon, again, striking back here, saying, listen, we can still, when it comes to the big name guys, the superstars, we can go into your backyard and pull them out and get them up to Eugene. And if USC, like I said a few minutes ago, doesn't respond to this, then a lot of the momentum they've built up is going to tank, right? Because all it takes, we see it all the time in recruiting. A couple big-time recruits swing one way or the other. A lot of other recruits follow, and momentum is built or momentum is lost. It looked like USC was building momentum, and then in one big move, Oregon has shut it down, at least right now. It's a heck of a battle right now on the West Coast. Love to see it. It makes college football so much better. In the world of NIL and transfer portal stuff, people kind of lose a little sight of the old school recruiting battles, the regional stuff that happens, the intricacies, the dramas, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was one of the more underrated elements of college ball. I'm glad it's back, at least in some capacity, with Oregon and USC battling for these top flight recruits on the west side of the country. And I think if you're a Ducks fan, if you were worried, maybe you weren't, maybe you had total faith the entire time, but if you were worried that USC was, taking control of California once again, I think this big move right here for Oregon should settle your nerves. The Ducks are still clearly the best play on the West Coast.